So if you're a falconer and the title of this video got your attention, good, because there's stuff you need to be aware of here in the UK specifically. If you're a non-falconer or someone that's even against falconry for some bizarre reason, I'm glad you're watching this video too. And let's hope you've got an open mind and you're not blinkered by social media rubbish, hearsay and non-facts passed on parrot fashion, often in order to get your money. Because falconry and falconers have been around for at least 4,000 years that we factually know of. So the thought that falconers would mistreat their birds, which is the thing that their whole lives revolve around, is, when you think about it, quite ludicrous, isn't it? Just as you've got maybe a pet dog or a pet cat, your love of that animal would mean that you look after it as best as you possibly can. Now, of course, when it comes to tethering birds of prey, there are some people that get that wrong for sure. There are people, we don't call them falconers, we call them dabblers, people that they don't do any research, they don't pay attention. And that's no different to, of course, people that keep dogs and cats, is it? So why on earth falconry has to get a bad rap? Often to further someone's agenda, often financially. It's easy to kind of try and get money to be an anti something, isn't it? Get people on your bandwagon. So to say, well, tethering birds of prey is wrong or in some way cruel because I saw a video, because you don't normally see these things for yourself if you're an anti. I saw a video of someone doing this, that and the other, and it was dreadful. What if it factually was dreadful and the person had no clue and shouldn't have been doing that in the first place, keeping a bird of prey in the first place? How can you possibly say, because of, let's say, 1% of people that tether birds of prey do so detrimentally to the bird, therefore falconry, or certainly tethering falconry birds, should be banned? Because my wife's a nurse and she's a damn good nurse, and as a nurse you care about people, but let me assure you, there are nurses that really don't care about people. Dreadful at their job. There are policemen policewomen that are known as bent coppers. They still exist. There are people that head religion, that fiddle with children. They still exist. There are teachers that don't like children. So by that non-argument of I saw someone tethering a bird badly, does that really mean then that we shouldn't have policemen, teachers, nurses, or people heading up religion? Of course not. So these sort of arguments are just ludicrous. You can't say because one person did something badly, it should be outlawed. It's a nonsense. It's a non-argument, isn't it? You know, educate yourselves, please. So let me explain why birds of prey are tethered for the non-falconers. Many just interested. Why are they? I get asked that every single weekend. Why do you tie them down? Is the common phrase. Why do you chain them up? Well, you kind of don't do either, really, do we? So from the falconer's point of view, you need to know that there are forces in play right now, 2022, that are trying to stop falconers tethering their birds, or the thin end of the wedge. And this is what's currently happening. People are trying to stop zoos, so a collection of animals on display to the public, from being able to tether their birds. And I've been told, and this is rumour and hearsay, but a lot of top falconry bodies and falconry centres have told me this, that this is actually being headed up by someone at a very large, well-known collection of falconry birds, or rather a large collection of birds of prey. So someone that runs a zoo as a collection of birds of prey, conservation-minded, as we all are, of course, to be heading up something to stop other zoos tethering any birds of prey is quite ludicrous and quite ridiculous. Now, I'm also told that the main man involved in this, is actually someone whose falconry centre is also running cahoots with a very well-known BBC presenter who's actually a wildlife presenter that is also anti many things to do with animals. So bear that in mind. I don't know if this is true. Hopefully someone will comment to tell me the facts, or maybe you know these facts already. So I'm not naming names because I haven't been told these things as fact, but I've been told them from some very serious falconry people. So firstly then, you stop zoos being able to tether birds of prey. Well, of course there's a good reason for that in many contexts, but to have that as a blanket thing, zoos, people with birds of prey on display to the public cannot tether birds of prey, where does that end up? And by the way, let me just interject here. I run a falconry centre. It will make no difference to me whether we tether all of our birds or none of our birds. We currently tether not many of our birds, and by 12 months' time, there'll probably be one bird here that is tethered, kept tethered, because it's for his own safety and well-being, without doubt. So this isn't sour grapes. I don't care from a business point of view whether I can or can't tether birds. But as a falconer, I do care, and all of you falconers should care. Why? Because keeping birds of prey tethered has got to be one of the best ways to keep working falconry birds, indeed many working birds of prey. It's not the only way. We can keep them free lofted, as I do at my falconry centre, most of the birds. But to tell me that I couldn't ever tether falconry birds, which is the way it will head, is absolutely ludicrous. It's against bird welfare. It's against our rights as falconers to care for our birds as best as we see fit. Remember, falconry is recognised by UNESCO as an intangible part of human heritage. It's not something we do on a whim. People have cared for these birds for over 4,000 years. Working birds. So if you're a UK falconer and you're in a club, you need to lobby that club and get some answers and facts about what's going on. So laws are going to come in and say zoos, these magnificent places, these people know everything about birds of prey, they are not allowed to tether birds of prey because it's not good for their welfare. But hang on, people keep birds of prey as falconry birds in their back gardens and they tether them. That's ludicrous. We need to stop that. Not good. So if you're not a falconer and you generally have an open mind and say, why do we tether birds of prey? Because it's one of the very best ways to keep working birds of prey healthy and happy without anthropomorphizing. A falconer can tell whether his bird's very relaxed and chilled out, or stressed out to the max, or just not quite right and a little bit stressed. Any animal keeper that cares about their charges can recognise the body language, even sometimes the language of the animals they keep. Falconers spend every waking hour and most sleeping hours thinking about falconry and their birds. They care about their birds more than anyone else. True falconers, of course. A working bird of prey is trained and conditioned to come to the falconer when it's called. Just like your dog is hopefully trained to come to you when you whistle it. And your dog comes to you, and you don't need to feed your dog to come back to you. You give it fuss and affection because it loves you, genuinely. It's a pack animal, it loves you, you're dominant, it wants to please you. Give it some fuss, it will come back. People that can't get their dogs to come back, not good indeed. Falconry birds do not love you. They're single-minded creatures for the most part, but they soon work out that you offer a completely easy resource. You offer the birds in the field free food. They just fly back. They get a free bit of food. Not bad at all. They're high-level predators driven by food. That's their driving force for most of the year, is food. And getting food and surviving. Getting enough calories in to equate, or hopefully better, the calories they burn on the hunt for food. So you've trained these birds to come back to you, and then you put them in an aviary. An aviary usually has a mesh, doesn't it? If you keep birds in an aviary, it's got a wire mesh front. Let the air and the sunning and so on and so forth. So every time your bird sees you, it wants to come back to you. It's conditioned. Oh, if I get and land on Dave, either I get free food, or I get taken for free, carried to the best hunting spots I know. Dave, or whoever is the falconer, is the best thing in my life, because he just facilitates my whole life. All the good things in my life, this falconer facilitates. I land on his glove, he takes me hunting, I can catch myself a big meal, or he feeds me, or, as a falconry bird, he puts me away at night, away from predators and the elements. They learn all of these things. A golden eagle learns that at a certain time of night, when it gets dark, it'd rather go get put away in its mews, in shelter from the elements and potential predators. These animals are not stupid. It flies towards you in its aviary, straight into the mesh. Just like a pet parrot would at home, maybe, if it wants to come out and see the person that imprinted it, handwritten it. The pet parrot at home, it doesn't need to fly. Most people clip the wings of their parrot still, don't they? So they can't fly around the house. So it flies onto the wire, the pet parrot, of its cage, and it destroys all the primary feathers and its tail feathers as it balances or hangs on the wire mesh. Looks a bit scruffy, doesn't impact on its life much. We have to keep our birds in perfect fettle because they have to be as good as a wild bird of prey to go hunting. If not, they're not going to catch anything. They have to be supremely fit and in tip-top condition. So you've conditioned the bird to come to you, you walk past its aviary, it flies straight into the front mesh, it hangs on with its feet and talons and all of its primary feathers to steady it, and its tail feathers get pushed through the mesh, the mesh of its aviary. It snaps the tips off of all of its primary feathers and destroys its tail. So now you've got a bird that looks like you don't care for it, excuse me, and you've got a bird that now can't fly properly, it's damaged itself. If it hasn't damaged its cere, the waxy bit of its beak as it hits the wire, if it hasn't generally physically hurt itself, it's certainly physically damaged its feathers. So by tethering a bird, you prevent that. There's no wire mesh, there's nothing for its wings to damage itself on. And of course, there's far more reasons why we've tethered birds for 4,000 years. We love our birds so much. We want them to be as best looked after as we possibly can. If you build an aviary, you can build it in a position so the bird can get sun, it can get rain, you can get a bit of everything, different perches in that aviary. You can't build the aviary as big as the whole world, because at the end of the day, it's going to get up even more speed when it flies to you and hit the front mesh even harder. So it's got a nice size aviary and it's got places it can move around, but it's static. There's nothing you can change. You can move perches, you can roof some of the roof in, you can roof all the roof in, you can leave all the roof unroofed. But as it is, that's as it is. The tethered bird can be put into the shade if the weather gets too hot. It can be moved into the morning sunshine. It can be moved near water and have a lovely bath in the sunshine. It can be sheltered from the elements. It can be put in a mews. A mews is a place where you keep birds of prey. A sheltered mews, so that it's away from the elements, away from the frost layer, away from the rain, away from a draft. You can micromanage that bird's entire day because it's a tethered bird. You can put it somewhere where it can see stuff going on. Some of our birds are really intelligent, they want to see stuff going on. You can put it somewhere quieter. Maybe it's a young bird in training, doesn't want to see so many people and dogs running around. You can tailor-make its entire world every minute of the day if you want to, because it's totally movable where you place that bird. You can put it on a low perch if it's a new bird, just so if it does get a bit baity, wants to fly from something that gives it a moment of fear, it lands on nice soft grass. But maybe then, like many of ours, you can bring the perch so the bird's perching 4, 5, 6 feet up in the air, eye level to you. It feels really relaxing because birds like to be high, don't they? Tethering birds of prey is about their welfare. It's another choice that falconers can have. We can choose to put them in an aviary, but if we put them in an aviary, a free loft in falconry parlance, we then have to think about how we manage it. So we can't really have a big open front most of the time. We have to use the barred window system, and I'll tell you about that in another clip. But let's think about birds of prey. What do they actually do? Wild birds of prey. Remember, ours are captive bred here in the UK. They've never come from the wild. They haven't known the wild, but luckily they're falconry birds or display birds. They get to fly free in the wild most days. How about that? But they get all the benefits of shelter, being protected from predators, never starving, even if they're rubbish at hunting. And they know that. Surely, because I know plenty of people, you must know people that have had aviary birds like finches or parakeets and the roof's blown off in high winds. And within 2 or 3 days, most of the birds are back in the aviary because that's where they get fed. That's where they're sheltered. Birds of prey are not humans in a feathery skin. They do not want and desire your wants and desires. And then sadly, the reason most people are anti-tethering birds is because in our psychology, we think of birds to be free. They're a symbol of freedom, aren't they? Many birds are a symbol of freedom. Let them fly free. Why does an apex predator want to fly free? To get a mate and show off, to get food, to get away from danger if it needs to, and shelter. We provide our birds with all of those things. A mate even some of the time as well. Remember, they spend most of the year on their own. It doesn't want to do the things you think you would want to do if you were that bird. It doesn't see the sun in the sky and think, oh, I'm going to go flying around today. Darn it, I can't. I'm tethered. It doesn't think like that because it doesn't want to fly around, because it's a predator. And while it's flying, it's emptying its fuel tank at a fast rate. And it never knows when it's going to eat again. It never knows, will it get to a fuel station in time and fill up my tank? Because if its tank runs out, it's dead. Once it runs out of calories and becomes weak, it will never catch anything, and quickly it will starve to death. It has no desire to waste energy. Its perfect life is to eat something, chill out, preen, have a bath, sunbathe, get in the shade if it's too hot. Absolutely brilliant. I've been flying birds of prey most of my life. I can honestly tell you, most birds of prey would happily be tethered if they're well looked after, fed in the morning, a good feed, and they wouldn't care if they don't fly again. It's true. I've worked with these birds nearly all of my life, and I can tell you now, the pleasure I get out of flying these birds is for my selfish reasons. I, and most falconers of course, love to see their birds flying wild and free. If the bird is well fed, stuffed full first thing in the morning, it has no motivation to go flying around. None whatsoever. If you feed your bird well fed for breakfast in the morning and let it go, it will fly to a tree just because it's a higher perch, and it will spend the day sitting there instead of the perch you've provided for it. It will not fly around doing the loops, screaming merrily, I'm free, I'm a bird. If you're a non-falconer, you need to understand the psychology of these birds. They do not sit on their perches tethered by tethering systems that have been worked out and sort of refined over thousands of years and think, my life's rubbish, I'm a bird, I should be free, I'm sitting here. I've worked with them all of my life, well, most of my life. Believe me, if you don't know and understand their psychology, talk to an eminent falconer, talk to someone that keeps birds of prey. They're the people that know. And the worst people for us falconers are the ones that say, oh, look at that poor bird, it's tied down. And they stand there with a dog shackled around its neck, physically tethered to them. It can't go anywhere because the poor thing is shackled around its neck. The irony. And then they take their dog off somewhere else after being disgusted at looking at my birds tethered down, as they say. And the dog drags them away, strangling itself. They haven't even trained their dog to walk at heel, but they've got an opinion on keeping another species of animal they know nothing about. They can't even train their own dog. It is physically strangling itself every time it goes on a walk, but that's perfectly acceptable. It's a very strange world indeed. If you're not sure why falconers tether their birds, please ask them. Most falconers are incredibly good people, and as much as most of us actually like to keep away from people, enjoy the peace and quiet of the countryside, most falconers will pass the time of day because they're so passionate about what they do. Come and see us at Icarus Falconry. If you're not sure why birds are tethered, come and have a chat with us. Most of our birds aren't tethered, ironically, in part of this video, but being able to tether birds of prey is a massively important welfare tool for falconry birds, for the birds. It's easier to keep birds free lofted than it is to keep them tethered. That's a fact, but it doesn't mean it's better for the birds. So here's a key thing for those that don't know. If a bird stands on one leg, then it's very relaxed and chilled out. Look at that. See what she did? She's read the ruddy script and gone against me. So Zara here, she's not been tethered now for the whole winter. This is her first day being tethered, and she'll be back in a loose aviary in a free loft again later. The sun's out, and I'm going to start working with this girl soon, and it will be beneficial to me and to her if I can tether her from time to time. Look at this bird, preening in the sunshine, absolutely relaxed, bothered by being tied down, not in the slightest. And then if you look at the bird behind her here, that's her boyfriend Nigel. They live separately because we don't want them to breed, because because I couldn't find enough people for the young to go to that I trust, really. So her boyfriend's in his free loft. Now you can see it's got a barred window, because if you're going to free loft, as we've probably already mentioned, for birds of prey that are working, the only real usable window is a barred window, because then if they fly to what could be wire, they'll just slide down the bars, and if you put a nice perch on as a windowsill, they'll land on that instead. So that's one way of getting around birds flying to the front mesh. But generally it means, of course, you need a window rather than the whole front. Or again, they're liable to fly into that front if you're not careful. But you can also see that aviary barred window there has 1-inch weld mesh in front of it. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera. That's nothing to do with the bird inside. That's put on the outside because we've got one rather daft kestrel here that he likes to fly around from the flying field and go back into anyone's aviaries that have got bars to see if they've left any food. And Nigel there will eat him if he goes in. So a secondary mesh that's nothing to do with the bird inside. But let's look at these two birds for a second. One's free lofted, it's not tethered, and the bird in the foreground is tethered. What's going on? What are the birds doing? They're keeping very still. I'm sure one of them will move now just to sort of on cue, but look at what the birds are doing. One's on the highest place it can access, that perch, and one's on the highest perch in its aviary, and of course at the front where it can see the most stuff going on, and it's doing nothing. Think about the bird's psychology. These are not people. They do not have your desires, your whims, and your thought processes. That's what she thinks of that idea. These are apex or close to apex predators. They are not robots, but the way they view the world is very, very different to you. How do I know this? Have I got a degree in bird psychology? Have I got really good grades from school? Am I a scientist? Am I a psychologist? No. I've been working closely with birds for 40 years of my life. Observing them, thinking how they think and what they think. In a way, but again, easy to anthropomorphise. And for you falconers, keep your ears to the ground and try and find out what is going on in the world of falconry, because I can tell you now, if falconry centres and birds of prey centres and zoos are not allowed to tether their birds, that is going to have a knock-on effect for falconers in the UK and falconry, and it will not be a good thing for birds of prey flown in captivity. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Sorry about the waffle, but this is starting to make me seethe.